Exodus 17, verses 1 to 7 is our venue this week. We will be catching up with the Lord's people after his saving Passover of their bloodied doorframes, after his midnight visitation upon all the households of Egypt, from Pharaoh on down through all levels of society, right down to the Egyptian livestock. Not an Egyptian house without someone dead, without the sound of loud wailing. Pharaoh virtually opening the door to kick out the Hebrews, glad to see them go. After 430 years in Egypt, God demonstrates his signs, wonders and mysteries in the 10 plagues, answers the cries of his people for help, and now the Israelites, 600,000 men on foot, plus women, children, flocks and herds, are on their way to the promised land. From this time on, all the firstborn males of Israel, both human and animal, will be consecrated to God. Not alone on their journey, as the Lord goes before them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, God leading them by way of the desert toward the Red Sea, the long route. By the more direct route, they may face war, change their minds, and turn back to Egypt. True to form, Pharaoh changes his mind. Who will do all the work in Egypt now that the Israelites have gone? Determined to chase down God's people, he commits his whole army, men, chariots, and horses. Realizing the Egyptians are now hard on their heels, the Israelites, terrified, cry out to the Lord. Moses gets in the neck once more. The moans and groans of the Israelites. He should have left them behind, preferring to serve the Egyptians than die in the desert. Moses allays their fears. God will fight for them. He will deliver them. They just have to be still. Lifting his staff over the sea as God instructed, the waters part for Moses. God comes out fighting for his people. The Israelites go through on dry ground to safety on the other side. Not content with losing the firstborn of Egypt, Pharaoh will now lose his army to the water of the Red Sea as it returns to its place, engulfing and destroying his entire army. Israel is delivered. There is no doubt the wilderness is a place of dry and parched land where nothing grows, where water is in short supply, a rare commodity, much sought after. Not for the first time, the Hebrews cry out for water. The delivered people grumbling for water, for food, grumbling to Moses and Aaron, grumbling about God who supplies them with manna, the bread of angels, quail and water. Since leaving Egypt, the Israelites have complained bitterly against God, failing to follow his instructions, being disobedient. Here they are, a delivered people on a journey to the promised land, perhaps also thirsty for an estimated time of arrival in their new homeland. Here they are struggling to face each day with no apparent end to their journey in sight, feeding off one another's anxiety and stress. The quarrelling and grumbling continues among the Israelites, demanding more water. Moses is getting exasperated with the constant bickering and complaining. He cries to the Lord, "What am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." Moses fears being lynched. Moses strikes the rock indicated by God in full sight of the elders of Israel. Water is forthcoming. Moses called the place Massah, meaning testing, and Meribah, meaning quarrelling, because the Israelites quarrelled and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" What is this they are saying? Is the Lord among us or not? I'm afraid those words stuck in my craw, and probably those of Moses and God. The complainants have just experienced some of the most powerful and greatest of God's signs, wonders, and mysteries. Experiences of God's holy protection and provision, his deliverance. This, their God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, their God who is intent on fulfilling the promises he made to them, to make them a great nation, to give them a land of their own, a land flowing with milk and honey, the promised land. Delivered from the hands of their oppressors by God, yet still they moan, groan, and quarrel. What short memories. Perhaps they are physically and spiritually blind to the Lord's work in their behalf, that the Lord has come out fighting for them. They have not recognised God's signs, wonders, and mysteries for what they are, his mighty power and greatness, his hand at work for them, work only possible for and with God, impossible for humans. After all God's exertions on their behalf, surely Israel knows God is to be trusted. But Israel is a stiff-necked people, stubborn and arrogant. They appear to lack faith in him, do not trust or fully believe. They may have been circumcised in the body, but as yet remain uncircumcised in the heart, their hearts not yet set apart for God. Yes, we could very well criticise the behaviour of the Israelites, their doubt, faithlessness, disobedience, their less than thankful complaints and moans. Before we even give in to slagging them off, let us ask this question of ourselves. Are we in any position to cast a critical eye over their actions? Don't you hear some words of Jesus filtering through the air and convicting your heart? Words about casting the first stone or judging others. These words should shake us to the core of our being and faith. A couple of weeks ago, I was reading an article on the Facebook page of Sanctuary First, which is an online pioneering ministry by the Church of Scotland. The article was by a young woman who is a Church of Scotland probationary minister, and it really hit a home run with me, partly because we have been looking at the Exodus over the past few weeks. She commented on the way scholars have gone all over Moses' parting of the Red Sea, and their many ways of explaining it away. Perhaps a weather phenomenon caused the parting of the Red Sea, though the scientists admitted that this weather phenomenon was extremely rare, and the chances of it happening in that specific region were in the likelihood of once every few thousand years. So it would have been a miracle itself that this weather phenomenon happened at the precise time when the Israelites needed to cross the Red Sea to escape the Egyptians. Scholars have tried to analyse and dissect all 10 plagues of Egypt, the fall of the walls of Jericho and Jesus' miracles, his resurrection. Anything extraordinary and biblical they will try to explain away. They will try to associate extraordinary biblical events with natural, scientific, weather or other explainable phenomenon. The young minister went on to ask these questions, questions which I have often asked of myself and other people of faith. Why I and some people find it easier to accept a rare miracle of science over a miracle of God? Do we really need to understand how God did it? Can't we just accept it as a miracle? After all, our God is the Creator God, Creator of all things. We too are experiencing a bit of a wilderness situation at the moment, the wilderness of COVID-19. In a dry and parched land of lockdowns and restrictions, travelling on a journey that we cannot see an end to anytime soon. Some of us are struggling through each day, maybe feeding off one another's anxiety and stress, thirsty to arrive safely at the end of our journey through this dry and barren land to come out the other side of COVID-19. Some of us are struggling to feel the presence of God at this time, wearily trying to find his peace, perhaps asking or shouting angrily at him, demanding to know where he is when we need him, especially in this pandemic, complaining, moaning and groaning, and perhaps also stiff-necked like the Israelites, while failing to follow his word, works and ways, a bit disobedient. Maybe we too are physically and spiritually blind to God's hand at work. Where is our faith, trust and belief in God? Do we hear the words of Jesus ringing in our ears? You of little faith, why are you so afraid? You of little faith, why did you doubt? God is with the Israelites in their wilderness days, supplying their every need, giving them chance after chance to mend their ways, severely testing God's patience. But God does not renege on his promise to the patriarchs. God continually spares the Israelites, comes out fighting for them because of his promise. He would later send his Son to their rescue, to the Jew first, and then to us, the Gentiles. How often do we thank or give God the glory for extraordinary things he has done in our lives? Maybe we should count our blessings and name them one by one, and it will surprise us what the Lord has done. Many of us will have had at least one or more strange or wonderful experiences in our time, something so extraordinary we could not try to explain it away. Often we chalk these happenings up to amazing coincidences. But what if it is God's hand at work? What if there are no such things as coincidences, only God incidences? At the beginning of the Yom Kippur War in 1973, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the holiest day of the year in Judaism, God's people were attacked, odds stacked against them. A captain in the Israeli army, who was a Jew by birth, not by faith, a non-believer, gave this testimony. 1,200 Syrian tanks launched their attack. The Israeli Golani Brigade commander had only 2 tanks and 10 men on duty. Waves of Syrian tanks bearing down on them until only a mile away from the Sea of Galilee. They stopped. What stopped them? Looking up at the sky, the captain testified that he saw a great grey hand pressing down as if it were holding something back. For him, the secular soldier, this was a sign from God, holding back attacking forces until Israel was alerted to leave her Day of Atonement prayers and get back into action, driving the invaders back against the odds. In Amos 9, the Lord says, I will bring my people Israel back from exile. I will plant Israel in their own land, never again to be uprooted from the land I have given them. I want you to think about that. Take a look back at any strange happenings in your life. Remember this and the Lord's word about his people. Think, how great is our God. For God's power and might is beyond our human understanding. We are people of faith, and faith is stepping out, trusting in God. Even though he had the fate of a nation on his shoulders, Moses didn't question God's instructions. He didn't ask God, how are you going to make this happen? He trusted and obeyed what God was asking him to do. God is with us, will never leave or abandon us. Open your heart, mind and eyes. Wake up and smell the coffee of the spiritual reality of God, his power and greatness still coming out, fighting for his people Israel, for you and me, to protect, provide and deliver us. No more sleepwalking into the future. In faith, let us be aware of and look out for the Lord's hand at work in this world, even when it is beyond our understanding. To drink of the life-giving water that Jesus offers freely, we only have to ask him for that living spiritual water, and we will never thirst again. Amen.